New Orleans has been under a heightened state of security after the deadly terrorist attack Wednesday. Bourbon Street, it reopened today, but with newly installed barriers and a large police presence. Snipers lined nearby rooftops as tens of thousands of football fans filtered into the Superdome to watch the Sugar Bowl. For more, I want to welcome New Orleans Councilmember at Large, J.P. Morrell. Councilman, thank you so much for being with us tonight. First, how is the city coping since this attack?
It's been difficult. I mean, obviously, the day of, everyone went into New Year's Eve, New Year's night with a sense of joy and celebration, optimism for the new year. And we woke up to heartbreak, a terrorist attack in a United States city in New Orleans, the city of inclusion and joy and celebration. And it was a gut punch. I mean, we really were struggling. But like every American, we knew, even at that time, as we struggled with our dead, with our wounded, with our officers who were also injured in the attack, that you cannot allow terrorists to win. And when they did this targeted attack, when this individual decided to do this attack on our city, he did it for the purposes of generating terror and despair and hoping that in the face of that, we would falter. And what you saw today with Bourbon Street reopening, there was a memorial beforehand that the mayor led, but opened with the brass band, and we allowed people to come back out there. That was us telling the terrorists, you're not going to win. And we are still mourning. We're still struggling with the outcome of what happened, but we're not letting that define us as a city. I mean, you know, we're a city that's been here longer than the United States. We have faced disasters, man-made and natural, and we always come back stronger and more resilient, and we will do that again.
What kind of aid is the government providing to the victims and their families? I just keep thinking about the daughters and the sons and the mothers and the fathers and the friends who went out or watched their family members go out or were out there with their loved ones. And there are people that did not come home. There are some people that survived the attack and were with people who did not. What is the government doing for those folks?
The government is still figuring out on the federal level how to process that. What we did immediately when this occurred, first off, fortunately, because the layout of New Orleans, our major medical centers are literally blocks away from Bourbon Street. So as far as medical resources, those were all instantaneous. We tapped our friends in Boston from the Boston Marathon bombing. We immediately, as a city, stood up a fund for survivors and people affected by this terrorist attack. That was done almost within hours after it started. And we have been standing up our own resources and had other nonprofit groups come from across the country to really resource down here. We're still figuring out with our state and federal government what resources they're going to provide. I mean, obviously, for the impacted businesses, all the closures, as you know, French Quarter was pretty much closed all of yesterday and most of today. SBA knows how to deal with that. But when it comes to the struggle, the heartbreak, the grief, those are things the government doesn't really know how to help with. And so we as a city have taken upon ourselves to try and provide those resources until the state and federal government can catch up.
NBC News has learned that the city had top-of-the-line barriers to prevent car attacks, but they did not use them on New Year's when this tragedy occurred. There has been a lot of talk about the barriers, a lot of reporting. NBC News has reporting, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. Do you have more information about possible security lapses that evening? I'm particularly struck by the police superintendent, who seemed to be unaware, according to our NBC News reporting, that the city had these barriers available to them.
Well, I can't speak to what Chief Kirkpatrick said, but I can tell you from my experience, there were top-of-the-line barriers installed in New Orleans after the attack that happened in Nice over a decade ago. High top-of-the-line barriers. over time, those barriers have failed. Mechanically, there were issues. What we've been made aware of as a council, separately from the mayor and that part of the city that was managing that, is that there was an effort to replace those barriers, and that replacement process was not in place before New Year's Eve or before New Year's Day, New Year's morning, and that according from the mayor's office and the Department of Public Works that were doing that their goal internally was to have all of that installed before the Super Bowl, which is next month. Now, as a council, we have a lot of unanswered questions, and the public in New Orleans has a lot of unanswered questions, because if those bollards, those high-powered fancy bollards, were not operable, what efforts were being taken to put hardened infrastructure in to replace them, since the replacements were not going to be in place for New Year's night or for the Sugar Bowl? And that's something that we as a council, because that is in our purview, are working as we speak to get information on that. Now, that has been more of a long tail focus, because right now, until the FBI fully moves on from New Orleans to the other parts of the country as it's doing an investigation, our ability to do fact finding is rather limited till they move on past this initial period they have now. But that is something that we are very troubled about, that this was not done. In particular, this afternoon, when Bourbon Street was reopened, there were a lot of temporary structures out there, and it seemed to be that some of these temporary structures were already owned by the city. And so there's a lot of unanswered questions there. We will, as a city council, get to the bottom of that. But what I will say is, based upon what happened, I think part of what the confusion has been with the chief and many of the people who are trying to interpret what she's been saying, and I'm also interpreting because I didn't really understand it, some of it as well, is that all of those bollards are all mitigation factors for a terrorist attack. Because as you know, when this individual who did this attack, not only did he drive his car onto Bourbon Street, as the FBI
he drove
reported,
around, yes.
Drove around right, on
yes.
the sidewalk. But even in addition to that, he had pre-planted IEDs on other streets in addition to it. And that there was at least an effort on his behalf to have the ability to remotely detonate those as well. So this was a very motivated, very skilled terrorist, self-taught, the military, inspired by ISIS. But it is absolutely important for us as a city to get to the bottom of what went wrong and what we can do better to do better.